Right now, as you sit watching this, you are participating in a game. But it's a game where the rules were written long before you were born. In fact, the exact reason you feel like you're running on a financial hamster wheel, working harder, earning more, yet somehow staying in the exact same place, isn't your fault. To understand the trap, we have to travel back exactly 2,054 years. The year is 44 BC. Rome is the wealthiest empire on earth. But beneath the golden statues and grand speeches, the empire is secretly rotting from within. Meet Marcus. Marcus is a regular Roman citizen. He works 12 hours a day as a blacksmith, hammering iron swords for Caesar's legions. He's told that if he works hard, honors the gods, and saves his silver coins, called denarii, he will eventually build a good life. Marcus thinks his savings are safe. But the Roman emperor has a massive problem. He has promised huge payouts to his soldiers. He wants to build massive monuments to himself. And Rome's treasury is completely empty. The emperor can't just raise taxes, or the citizens will revolt and chop off his head. So, he calls his master of the mint into a dark room and devises a secret trick. A trick that would change human history forever. The emperor orders all silver denarii to be collected. He melts them down. But before restamping them, he mixes in cheap copper. Suddenly, where there used to be 1,000 pure silver coins, the emperor now has 2,000 coins. They look the same. They feel the same. Marcus gets his coins back. He still has 100 denarii. He feels safe. But there is an invisible math trap waiting for him at the market. When Marcus goes to buy bread, the baker demands twice as many coins. Why? Because the baker isn't stupid. He knows the coins are fake. He knows the money has been diluted. This was the world's first massive experiment with inflation via currency debasement. Marcus didn't lose any physical coins, but the purchasing power of his life savings was cut in half overnight. The emperor stole Marcus's labor without ever touching his wallet. Now, you might be thinking, classy, that's a cool history lesson, but I'm not a Roman blacksmith. How does this keep me poor today? Because the Roman Empire didn't die. It just upgraded its technology. And the trap Marcus fell into is the exact same one waiting for you every time you get a paycheck. Let's look at the modern trap. Most people are taught a very specific traditional script. Go to school, get a good job, work hard, save money in a bank account, and buy a house. But if you follow this script in the modern era, you are mathematically guaranteed to stay broke. Here is the loop the 1% engineered to ensure you keep working forever. Meet Alex. Alex represents the modern middle class. He saves $10,000 in a traditional bank account, feeling proud. The bank offers him a 0.01% interest rate. But behind the scenes, the central bank is doing exactly what the Roman emperor did. They are printing trillions of new dollars out of thin air. When you inject trillions of new dollars into the economy, the value of every existing dollar drops. If inflation is sitting at a real-world rate of just 7%, Alex's $10,000 savings doesn't physically disappear. Next year, the app still says $10,000, but its actual purchasing power has dropped to $9,300. Here is the first loop of the trap, the labor loop. Because the currency is constantly losing value, the price of real assets, like real estate, stocks, and scarce commodities, skyrockets out of reach. The average house used to cost 3 times the average annual salary. Today, it costs 8 to 10 times the average salary. Alex is forced to work harder and longer, just to afford the exact same quality of life his parents had. He is running as fast as he can, but the finish line is being moved backward by the system. But the creators of the system ran into a problem. If citizens realize they can never catch up, they will eventually stop trying. They will stop working, stop consuming, and the system will collapse. So, to prevent a revolt, the modern elites created the ultimate psychological upgrade to the Roman trap, the illusion of wealth through normalized debt. When society makes real wealth, like owning land or being completely debt-free, nearly impossible for the average worker, they replace it with fake wealth. They tell you, you can't afford a $60,000 car? That's fine. Can you afford $600 a month? You can't afford a $3,000 vacation? No problem. Just split it into 4 easy payments with Klarna or Afterpay. This is the second loop of the trap, the debt loop. Debt is not just borrowing money. Debt is mathematically borrowing your future self's time. When you buy a luxury item on credit, you aren't paying the bank back with paper dollars. You are paying them back with the hours of your life you haven't lived yet. You are pre-selling the Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays of your future 35-year-old self just to look rich at 25. The modern economic system requires you to stay in debt. Why? Because a man who is completely debt-free is dangerous to the system. If you have zero debt, 6 months of living expenses saved, and minimal living costs, you have total leverage. You can quit a toxic job. You can start a risky business. You can say no to bad corporate policies. But if you have a massive mortgage, a high-end car lease, and maxed-out credit cards, you are completely compliant. You cannot risk quitting. You must put your head down, accept the low wage increases, and keep grinding the gears of the machine. Debt is the invisible prison wall that keeps the modern workforce perfectly behaving. So, how deep does this loop go? It turns out, the banks aren't just using your debt to control your labor. They are using your debt to create the very money that inflates away your savings. Let's look at the absolute craziest trick the modern financial system plays on us. It's a mechanism called fractional reserve lending. And once you see how it works, you can never look at a bank the same way again. Most people believe that when they deposit $1,000 into a bank, that money sits safely in a vault waiting for them. But that is a complete illusion. The moment you walk out the door, the bank takes your $1,000 and uses the legal rules of the financial system to multiply it. Under fractional reserve guidelines, banks are only required to hold a tiny fraction of your deposits, often as low as 10%, or in recent years, completely 0%. The bank takes $900 of Sarah's money and lends it to Alex. Now, think about the math here. Sarah still checks her banking app and sees $1,000. She believes she owns that money. But Alex now has $900 in his hand. Suddenly, out of nowhere, $1,900 of total digital currency exists in the ecosystem, backed by the exact same physical $1,000. The loop continues exponentially. The $900 Alex spent gets deposited into another bank. That bank holds 10% and lends out the rest. Through this chain of debt creation, your single physical $1,000 deposit can be expanded into nearly $10,000 of new, digital credit circulating in the economy. Every single time someone takes out a loan for a car, a house, or a business, new money is magically manifested out of thin air. And what happens when a tidal wave of new money enters the economy? The value of the cash you worked hard to save shrinks even faster. The system is rigged so that savers are losers and borrowers are rewarded, provided those borrowers know how to use the rules to their advantage. The middle class saves depreciating cash and buys depreciating liabilities. The elite borrow newly created credit and buy appreciating, cash-flowing assets. If you try to play this game by the traditional rules, you lose. You cannot save your way to financial freedom. You cannot work enough overtime to outrun a printing press. So how do you break the 3,000-year-old trap? You stop acting like a worker in the Roman marketplace, and you start acting like the emperor. Here is the exact blueprint to escape the loop. Breaking out of an institutional trap requires a complete shift in your financial psychology. It requires you to execute 3 specific steps. The very first step is to cut the strings the system uses to control your labor. You must aggressively liquidate consumer debt. Every single dollar you pay in interest to a credit card company or a high-interest auto loan is pure fuel you are feeding into their machine. When you eliminate liabilities, you drastically drop your monthly cost of survival. The lower your cost of survival, the higher your leverage to make bold, wealth-building moves without fear. Stop stockpiling massive piles of cash in traditional savings accounts thinking it makes you safe. Cash is trash. Cash is a depreciating token designed to lose value over time. Once you have a basic emergency fund of 3 to 6 months to protect yourself, every single excess dollar you earn must be immediately converted into real hard assets. You want to own things that cannot be easily duplicated, printed, or debased by a central authority. When you own shares of great businesses, real estate, or scarce assets, inflation actually becomes your friend. As the value of the currency drops, the nominal price of your assets goes up, protecting your purchasing power across generations. The final, ultimate shift is understanding the true definition of wealth. True wealth is not measured in luxury items, designer clothes, or fancy sports cars. Those are just different types of golden cages. True wealth is measured in time. Financial freedom means having your assets generate enough passive cash flow to pay for your basic cost of living. The moment your passive investments cover your monthly expenses, you have broken the trap. You are no longer forced to sell your life hours for currency. You own your Mondays. You own your choices. The 3,000-year-old trap has survived for millennia because it relies on human ignorance. It relies on the fact that most people will never take the time to understand how money actually works. But now, you know the code. You know how the game is rigged. The choice is entirely yours. Will you stay on the hamster wheel, or will you use the math to build your own exit? If you want to keep learning how to break the rules of the financial machine using clear, cinematic stories every single week, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and welcome to the channel. See you in the next story.